Hey, how's it going? I'm Karlee Porter, and today I wanted to do a little video for you guys that involves two of my very favorite quilting techniques. This is my sample, so maybe this will give you an idea of what I want to show you. The first technique is called couching, which I do with my handy quilter Sweet 16. I think other machines can do it, provided they have the proper foot for it, but I know all handy quilter machines have this capability. The second technique is called graffiti quilting, but the graffiti quilting is just the idea of making it up as you go and kind of being very freeform. So this is my sample, which you'll see in both videos. I'm going to split these techniques into their own separate videos. So this video will be all about the couching and how to kind of master that technique. So let's get started. So I have another sample that I've made that you can see here, and it has a bunch of flowers on it, and each one of these flowers uses a different type of yarn, and so I wanted to show each of those to you and kind of show you the type of yarn that I like to use. And one thing to really know about couching, at least that I found, is that there's so much experimentation. You can try almost any type of yarn and it kind of comes out a little differently. So I want to encourage you to just take your favorite yarns and see what works for you, because the possibilities are endless. So let's look at each one of these flowers. So the cool thing about these flowers is that every single one that I did was all with the same skein of yarn for each flower. So this flower here was actually from this skein of yarn, and you can see how the color changes, and that's how I got the different colors in my flower. As I was couching, the color was changing. Same with this flower here, and it's kind of funny that these turned out the way they did, because this was kind of just a happy accident. I didn't really plan for it, but this is the yarn that I used for that one. This one here is one of my most favorite out of this whole sample. The turquoise and the gold kind of reminds me of Native American jewelry, and I thought that was really cool. And that is from this yarn here. And then this flower here was done with this skein of yarn. And I think this is like a yarn that you would normally make like socks with, or maybe some gloves or mittens. But I thought that was really cool. So that kind of subtly changed colors. So I just did this flower starting in the center and working my way out, and that's how I got that effect. So that was pretty cool. I really like this one. I'm kind of saving it. I don't know when I'm going to use it because I just really like the colors. This flower here was also from this same skein of yarn, and it was kind of cool because there was a really big patch of purple that I was able to fill in this entire flower before it changed colors. So even though you see greens and yellows and blues in this skein, I just happened to use up all purple without getting to the other colors before I was done. So that's kind of the fun thing about variegated yarn, is you never are quite sure what you're going to get, and so filling in patterns, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that's where experimentation comes in. Alright, so now I've got just some plain black fabric underneath my machine, and I really liked the sample that I did with just the plain black, so I thought I would do it a little bit bigger. But I changed my mind. I'm gonna go for it, and I'm just gonna use this, and let's just see how it turns out. Like I said before, the variation in the color, sometimes it changes quick, and sometimes it's green for like ever, or red forever, or purple forever. So I'm just gonna go for it, and we'll just see what happens. There's one other thing that I did want to mention with the couching feet is the set that I bought from Handy Quilter comes in 3 sizes. There's a 1.5 millimeter, a 2 millimeter, and a 3 millimeter. And you would choose which one you're going to use depending on the diameter of the fiber that you're using. So because this is a fairly small diameter yarn compared to others, I chose to use the 1.5. And I also tested this yarn on like a scrap piece of fabric with that size foot first to make sure that it was going to look good. So that's just one thing, that there's really no right or wrong way to match your yarn with what foot size you use. You just got to experiment and see what works for you, because what works for one person may not work completely well for the next. So it's a lot of experimentation, but that's kind of what's fun about it, is you can just make it your own and kind of use it to your best capability. So I have the 1.5 foot, and I'm gonna go go ahead and do some quilting. Oh, one other thing, I promise we'll start after this. I chose a gray thread and I matched my bobbin to my thread. Normally you would just match your thread color to whatever fiber you're using, but because this is like every color of Joseph's coat, we're gonna just use gray so that it'll hopefully blend into everything. I don't think it will really show through at all, but just in case it peeks out here and there, it'll just be a neutral gray color. Okay, so I've got my machine all threaded and I've got my yarn here ready. The first thing that we need to do is get this yarn through our hopping foot's tiny little hole. I'm going to show you how to do that now. So the first thing we want to do is pull up our bobbin thread just like we normally would whenever we're quilting. Okay, so now I've got my 2 threads. So I'm going to stick my yarn through my needle bar and my presser bar, just right in between the 2. So hopefully you can see that. Okay, now I'm going to wrap this around like a lasso, and I'm going to hold my back threads and then pull this to make a little loop. Now I'm going to lower my needle and bring it back up again, and just watch as I pull this through, it's going to pull the yarn through. And then I can grab the end, and now I am ready to begin. A really good rule of thumb is if you can't pull your yarn through the hole when it's doubled, like I just did, chances are it's going to be too thick to flow through there smoothly while you're couching. So the next rule of thumb is to make sure you always have plenty of slack with your yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and do some quilting and watch and learn. Alright, so did you notice how my yarn was just nice and loose, and as I moved around, the yarn just pulled through. My hopping foot just pulls it right through and tacks it down. So one other thing I want to mention is that you want to have a very tight thread count as far as your stitches per inch. So even though I was moving the quilt pretty slowly, my needle was moving pretty quickly. The more stitches that you have in a smaller space, the better your yarn is going to stay tacked down in the long run. So notice as I'm moving, I may not be moving my quilt very quickly, but I'm going to be moving my needle fairly quickly. Now the key to getting good couching is not to go as fast as you can, but to take your time, move nice and slowly, and just make sure that you're giving the yarn enough stitches to keep it nice and tacked down so that it's not gonna peel off or anything like that. See how it gives me that nice thick line and it really stands out? That's because I'm just going right next to each stitch and filling it in just like you would if you were frosting a cake. Now this is something you want to be really careful of. Sometimes your yarn will twist and you do not want to run that over with your needle, or you will probably just cry and send yourself to bed and not quilt for the rest of the night. So as you're couching, you just want to give yourself a glance over here every few seconds just to make sure that your yarn isn't misbehaving when you're not watching it. Now notice how I'm getting really tight with my slack here, and see what it did to my quilting here. I'm going to lift my needle and pull this away, and do you see how none of that got caught? I got about an inch without it being tacked down because my tension was too tight and it was pulling my yarn to the side of the hole. You want to make sure that your yarn always has plenty of slack so that it can just be right in the center of the hole of your hopping foot. So if for some reason that does happen, a really easy fix is you can just go back to the spot of where it stopped catching the yarn and pull it tight and just make sure that you don't have any loose yarn back here, and then just let it be loose and keep on going, and it should tack it right down for you. There we go. And then I can come back in and just clip that little tiny thread and get it out of the way. And no one will ever know. Booyah! Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed my video, and I hope that you might try couching on your own machine, and if you do, I would love to see pictures, so please send them my way. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I will always moderate the comments and answer any questions you might have, or you can always email me or Facebook me or Instagram me. Not Twitter. I don't know how to use Twitter. Maybe I should learn. Anyways, happy quilting, and I will send another video on graffiti quilting your way pretty soon. Have a good night. Hey. Come here. Bring it here. Macho, macho. Bring it here.